This will define everything for the New York Rangers, as an NHL insider has revealed some shocking details on one player in particular heading into this season, and everything rides on this one thing that we're going to break down in this episode of Rangers Digest. We're also going to get into multiple other updates as it pertains to some players that could surprise in training camp, which is just a few weeks away at this point. We're going to break it all down in this episode. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 77% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything happening with the New York Rangers, this channel is built for blue shirt fandom, and this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. So go down below and hit that free subscribe button. But Bret, let's get right into it. Lots to get into today, including a new report from an NHL insider that I thought was pretty shocking when I first saw it. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but this is from David Pagnotta, and he goes on to say, on the Rangers this season, there's a lot of question marks actually coming up with a lot of insiders the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty quiet with some of the main insiders as it pertains to the Rangers, but last couple of days it's been getting a little bit louder. But on Lafreniere, do they look at that? To try and make a big, bold hockey type move? I think almost everything would be under consideration if this team gets off to a poor start. Now, I have to say, the first part of that, I mean, maybe they look at moving Lafreniere anyway, right? Like we were talking about it earlier this summer, that if it made sense, you could move off this player. He has been pretty disappointing. Let's not sugarcoat it since he signed his contract extension. But to me, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, Bret, I think it made sense in the summer if you were looking at like a JJ Peterka for Alexi Lafreniere trade. That could make a lot of sense for the New York Rangers. But if you're going to be trading or looking to trade Lafreniere, a quarter into the season because of how the team is playing, I don't know if that's a very smart move.
Yeah, I don't believe it's a smart move, Darius. And you make a great point there. During the summer, it made more sense to entertain a Lafreniere trade because there were actual options on
Yeah.
the market that you could replace him with and actually upgrade. But guys, we can't make the same mistake with Lafreniere, or at least Chris Drury can't make the same mistake where he paid Lafreniere way too early last season, giving him that contract extension. Now, I believe he would be making another mistake in pulling the plug on Lafreniere too early, trading him too soon. I would wait until at least the trade deadline to evaluate what's going on with the Rangers, evaluate Panarin, evaluate Lafreniere. I believe the Rangers will bounce back, but there is a world where the Rangers do get off to a slow start. Now, there are multiple reasons for that. There are new players, new key players on this team, Darius. Let's not forget that Chris Kreider feels like he's been here forever. He won't be on the Rangers roster this season. That's going to be an adjustment. Will, a guy like Will Cooley be able to step up even more, continue that progression, and replace some of that production that we've been getting from Chris Kreider? Not only that, but, losing Keandre Miller, replacing him with an upgrade in Vladislav Gavrikov. But guys, Adam Fox and Gavrikov have never played together, so they still have to, get that chemistry going. So there is a world where the Rangers do get off to a slow start, and you can't pull the plug on Lafreniere too early. I believe it would be another mistake made by Chris Drury.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm going to echo that. I think that it would be a mistake at this point in time. I think, during the summer, there was a lot more options if you wanted to look at trading Lafreniere. As you head into the season, if you're going to make a decision like, hey, we're under 500 at Thanksgiving, and now we're going to pull the plug on Lafreniere, what options are you going to have out there? I don't think very many, right? I don't think that would be a very smart move. So if Pagnotta is trying to say, maybe they make a decision on Lafreniere where it's like, okay, clearly he's not the player we thought he was. Maybe we do look at trading him at some point. That could make some sense during the season, right? But to actually pull the plug on him, try and look for a trade in season, a quarter into the season, I don't think you're going to find anything of worth, and I think it's going to make the Rangers worse. And like you said, there's a lot of new faces on this team. I mean, I would even put JT Miller into that category, right? Somewhat of a new face on this team heading into next season. There is some certainty. I think Gavrikov's going to be great. We don't know what him and Fox look like, but on paper and, just suspecting that they should look good, right? And then obviously the forward group. I think the success of the Rangers this season hinges on the play of guys, like you mentioned, Will Cooley, Alexi Lafreniere. Like, both of them have to take a step forward. If they don't, the team is probably in some trouble. Bret, how does he play, right? So it's going to be interesting. And speaking of if that is a problem. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a problem, but the Rangers obviously need to depend on some of their younger players this year. They have to step up big, right? And they have to fill these roles. And this is from Stan. And, some good points here about, Gabe Perreault and Bret Berard probably can't be on the team together this year. There's just not enough space, I think. And I think the Rangers need to put together a team of each line has a role, and I think that it's very important. You see that with a bunch of other teams around the league. So Dylan Robrick's also mentioned here, who had a great year in Hartford, has some size. Maybe he can spend some time on the third line. He had 34 points in 72 games in the AHL last year, so pretty good season last year. He's going to take another step forward. Again, big body. He's young, 21 years old, so excited to see how he develops. But would you agree with that, Bret, that there's some interesting question marks heading into this year and where certain players fit? Gabe Perreault, Bret Berard. I think right now, personally, I would have Bret Berard in the lineup. But what do you make of all of that? And, a guy like maybe Robrick surprising in training camp?
Certainly a lot of question marks, and I'm going to make a few points here in regard to, those questions that you just posed. And when it comes to Bret Berard and Gabe Perreault, I don't see a world where they're on the same, starting lineup this season. I think it's more likely that we see Bret Berard and Brennan Othmann in the same lineup, because you could always move Bret Berard, in my opinion, to the right side. Let's say, Taylor Radish, who they just brought in, paying him about $1.5 million. They expect him to produce, give solid production in the bottom six. But let's say, things go awry for Radish or he gets injured. I could see a world where Bret Berard gets moved to right wing and Brennan Othmann gets slated in at left wing, because, that is Brennan Othmann's natural position. So you wouldn't be moving him off that position. So that would be cool to see. And Bret Berard, we kind of already know what he could do. He's solid. He produced last season in 35 games of action. And let's not forget, in his fourth NHL game, he actually tore that labrum in his shoulder, but he was still able to produce at a pretty good clip, considering he was injured as badly, as he was. Probably shouldn't have been playing, but I understand, he's trying to earn ice time and wants to play. But nevertheless, still, I expect it's more likely that we see Othmann than Perreault on the roster. And the point when it comes to Robrick is it would be very interesting to see that fourth identity line in the future. Let's say Sam Carrick, entering that second year of that 3-year contract. If the Rangers were not to bring back Sam Carrick when he becomes a free agent, it would be very interesting to see him replaced with Robrick. And just imagine that line. You get even bigger. Sam Carrick is a big guy, but he actually looks little on that line with Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe. So if you put Robrick on that line in a few years from now, that would be really something cool to see. And when it comes to Lafreniere, another point I'd like to make is that the Rangers are just much better when Lafreniere is playing well. When Lafreniere scores a goal, the Rangers are 68, 11, and 4. 68, 11, and 4 in 83 regular season games when Lafreniere scores a goal. So that just goes to show you how much of the Rangers' success actually hinges on Lafreniere.
Absolutely. He needs to be good next year. There's no doubt about it. He needs to put together a really good season, and a season worthy of his contract, at least, because last season was not that. So I think all Rangers fans are hoping that he takes a step forward. And, I don't think Rangers fans are ready to move off this player yet, but I feel like if things go south and he has a poor season again, they might be starting to move off of him, or, at least the idea of moving off him. It could get pretty interesting there. And last thing on Robrick too, that I just wanted to make a point. You bring up a good point, that would be a Giants line of a fourth line there. That would be pretty cool. And his point production has kind of followed him to pro hockey, which is a good, it's really good. And I think that, when you're looking at the OHL and his time in the OHL, over a point per game player, now he's a half a point a game player at the pro level. That's really good production, I think, and that it's translated a little bit. He's probably going to have another year in the AHL. I want to see what he does this year. But then when you're looking at next year, when some of the contracts are up, that could be pretty interesting, that he could slot in maybe to a third line center role. And if he can score, if it translates to the pro level, that could be a really good player for the New York Rangers. Last thing I wanted to mention here, Bret, before we wrap up, is the Rangers are going to be featured on national television, of course, many times this season. A couple of the games I just wanted to bring up are, of course, the Winter Classic on January 2nd against the defending Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. That should be a good one. It's actually in Miami. That should be pretty interesting. Bret, are you excited for this one? Because there's a lot of outdoor games. I feel like some people are getting some fatigue for the outdoor games. Rangers were just in one last season as well. So how do you feel about that? And of course, nationally televised, the Pittsburgh Penguins are visiting MSG. Mike Sullivan versus Dan Muse should be pretty interesting. First game of the year.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Anytime you play a team like the Florida Panthers, obviously the Winter Classic is cool, but it sort of serves as a measuring stick. When you look at the regular season in any sport, some of these games kind of don't feel that meaningful or impactful. But when you play a team, like I said, like the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, it kind of shows you where you're at. So if the Rangers are going to bounce back, like we both believe they will, and they're playing well, clicking on all cylinders, it's going to be a great matchup to watch. And obviously, the Pittsburgh matchup is going to be fascinating. I cannot wait for that one. And one last point I wanted to make on Lafreniere.
Yep.
I don't think it's the right move to trade him, if the Rangers get off to a slow start. But one thing I will say is I have heard people talking about the fact that, in that 7-year contract, he does have a modified no trade clause that kicks in year 3. So we have to keep that in mind. If the Rangers were to trade him during this year, they could trade him to wherever they want. So keep that in mind. That 3rd year, when that modified no trade clause kicks in, he could deny a trade to 8 teams and make a list where he can tell the Rangers, you cannot trade me to. So keep that in mind.
I think that's a good point too. We've seen that with different players around the league. Jordan Kyrou, his name was in a lot of trade rumors this summer. His no movement clause kicked in. They can't trade him now. Same thing happened with Mitch Marner with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then they ended up losing him for essentially nothing in a sign and trade. So that is something that I think we're going to have to keep an eye on. If this season does go south, you're going to have to make a decision pretty quickly because it's going to be easier to trade him than when he has a modified no trade list. So that's a good point as well. But we want to hear what you have to say in the comments about potentially moving off of Alexis Lafreniere. Would you do it this season? Would you hang on to him? I think that he's probably going to have a better season. I'm excited to see what he's going to do under Mike Sullivan. But the conversation always continues down in the comments. Let us know how you feel. Find us on X. The link is in the description. You can hit us up there for any video ideas or anything there. The conversation always continues there. But let us know how you feel. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.